Eric Young. Eric Young looks set to be returning to his home away from home, that being Impact Wrestling. Now, several ex-WWE stars have been teased for a return to Impact Wrestling in the near future once their non-compete clause expires on July 18th, which just so happens to be the date of Impact Wrestling's Slammiversary pay-per-view this year. One such name being linked with a return to Impact Wrestling, of course, is Eric Young. Now, while some superstars have done quite a few social media posts teasing a run with Impact Wrestling, or teasing in some cases a return to Impact Wrestling, those names being the likes of EC3, Heath Slater, Brian Myers, Zack Ryder, etc. Eric Young has actually been a name that's been teased on the actual Impact Wrestling program for the last few weeks, and he hasn't done, from what I'm aware of, any actual social media post about a return to Impact Wrestling. His teasers have actually come on the program itself, which lends more weight to this theory that EY is about to return to the company which made him famous. Now, a couple of weeks ago on Impact Wrestling, Michael Elgin, the Canadian professional wrestler, teased a Team Canada reformation a few weeks ago on the program. However, of course, Michael Elgin is no longer with the company after the speaking out allegations. I say no longer with. It wasn't exactly the verbiage that was used by Impact Wrestling, was it? It was said he was no longer being used on programming going forward. That's what the company said, wasn't it? So I don't know if Michael Elgin is still technically under contract with the company or not. It's a very wish-washy situation there. I don't know exactly what it is, but Michael Elgin isn't going to be on Impact Wrestling TV for a while and the foreseeable future, or ever again. And if those allegations are true, then that's absolutely spot on by Impact Wrestling and the correct decision for them to do. So it doesn't look like maybe the Team Canada angle is going to happen, but it could still happen. It could still happen. There's definitely people in place which they could do it with. Of course, you have Scott D'Amore, who is currently the executive vice president, or one of the executive vice presidents, along with Don Callis, of Impact Wrestling. He appears on Impact Wrestling regularly. He, of course, was the coach, the leader of Team Canada in TNA back in the day, back in 2006 era TNA. It might have been even earlier than that, 2005 era. So you could definitely do a Team Canada reformation with him, Eric Young. And then, of course, there's quite a few Canadian professional wrestlers in Impact Wrestling right now, such as the North, right? I think a Team Canada stable that has Scott D'Amore leading it, Eric Young as sort of the lead singles wrestler, and then you've got the tag team in there of the North. That's quite an interesting concept for a faction right there. That's quite an interesting Team Canada reformation, and it also goes back to, once again, I've spoken about all the time with these Impact Wrestling videos at the moment, that Impact Wrestling is teasing bringing back TNA, bringing back and embracing their heritage of TNA. Now, obviously, one of those factions in TNA, of course, would have been Team Canada. That was a TNA faction. So if they're looking to bring back the likes of the Aces and Eights and other TNA wrestlers such as Chris Sabin, etc., if they wanted to do a sort of Impact Wrestling versus TNA, they could certainly do that by having a Scott D'Amore bring back Team Canada with Eric Young, a former TNA wrestler, and add in Impact Wrestling wrestlers such as the North and take on modern day Impact Wrestling. Could certainly be something they could do there. So it's totally possible, but it doesn't look like, as of last week, that's the direction that Impact Wrestling are going in when it comes to Eric Young's return to the company. Instead, we could actually be seeing another version of Eric Young returning in Impact Wrestling, another gimmick that Eric Young actually successfully pulled off during his stay in Impact Wrestling, that being Super Eric, the superhero alter ego persona that Eric Young used in TNA in the past. Now, last week, Impact Wrestling on the program had a vignette where we saw someone in the shadows grabbing a mask and a cape, not that kind of mask, an actual superhero mask and a superhero cape, which many people thought could signal the return of Super Eric to Impact Wrestling. Now, obviously, it makes the most sense. A superhero character, and it had the sort of same red and yellow colors that Super Eric had previously in TNA, and obviously with having having Eric Young on the free agent list after his release from WWE in April after WrestleMania as part of Black Wednesday, his contract, or his non-compete clause in his contract, is up at the same time as everyone else's. I believe the date it expires is like July 15th, not July 18th. July 18th is, of course, the Slammiversary pay-per-view, but I believe that their non-compete clause is actually up on the 15th, so any legal ramifications, therefore, are avoided there. So a lot of people came to jump to conclusions. We saw the cape, we saw the mask, we saw the colours. Eric Young's on the free agent list. He's got an abundance of history with Impact Wrestling, many people thought, okay, Super Eric is coming back to the company. Now, if you're not familiar with Super Eric was an alter ego of Eric Young that was in TNA Wrestling in 2008. And at the time, and like with a lot of the time in Eric Young's run in TNA Wrestling throughout his career, Eric Young at the time was a sort of weak, feeble, highly comedic character. He was in lots of funny backstage promos and vignettes with the likes of Jeremy Borash and others. I believe he had a feud with Robert Roode at the time, with Tracy Brooks, or was it Miss Tracy or Miss Brooks? That was his valet at the time. And he was just he got beat a lot, said he was very silly, very stupid. Every time his pyro went off, he fell to the floor because it surprised him. He was that kind of highly comedic character. And then suddenly, I think he got like a crisis of confidence. He would start running away and losing matches. And then suddenly we started to see Super Eric, the Super Eric character, who was this complete antithesis and opposite to Eric Young. He was strong, he was confident, he won matches, he got the lady at the end of the match. It was very obviously Eric Young. You could just by looking at him. I mean, one, he was called Super Eric, if that's not a giveaway. But regardless of the mask and the cape and the attire in which he was wearing, it was very, very obviously Eric Young. I likened it to a TNA version of the Blue Blazer and Owen Hart. It was very similar to that, and a comedic character where he would deny that Eric Young and Super Eric were the same people and all of that stuff. It was a who is under the mask kind of deal when it's very obvious who's under the mask. So it looks like that gimmick, that character could be on its way back to Impact Wrestling to facilitate the return of Eric Young to the company. Now, I think this would be a really fun way, actually, to introduce Eric Young back to the company. Have Super Eric come back, deny that Eric Young's returned to the company. Or Eric Young, no, I'm Super Eric. Eric Young, he's still with that other company. Eric Young was the one that got fired. Eric Young was the one that could barely get on WWE main event. Eric Young was the one that could barely get on TV. I'm not Eric Young. I'm Super Eric. I'm strong. I'm confident. I win matches. That guy's finished. He's retired. So you could have Super Eric come back, deny that Eric Young has returned to the company, and then eventually reveal, of course, that Eric Young is indeed back. Or you can have Super Eric return to the company, do well, win matches, come back strong, and then also maybe do like a separate load of vignettes that have Eric Young eventually return to the company. And then Eric Young comes back, and you have this whole thing of, are you Super Eric? Because Super Eric came back a couple months ago, and now Eric Young's back to the company. And then you could have Eric Young play dumb, like, I don't even know who you're talking about. Super who? I don't know what you're talking about. That could be a fun way of doing it. And some people will criticize this and say, well, why is Eric Young playing a comedy character after his run in WWE? Shouldn't he be serious? And his history in TNA and Impact Wrestling specifically, shouldn't he be serious? He could be a main event player in Impact Wrestling. And that's very true. But you have to look at it this way. This is the way I look at it when it comes to Eric Young's return to Impact Wrestling. Eric Young was a comedy character the majority of his time in Impact Wrestling. That's without a question. That is just a fact. If you were going to make it up in percentages, the amount of time in which he was a main eventer or a serious character compared to the time in which he was a comedic character, the comedic character heavily wins that one. He's mostly remembered, I would say, my fondest memories of him are in a comedic role in Impact Wrestling and as TNA. Now, of course, this deviated a few times. He was a serious heel when he was the leader of World Elite in 2009, a faction of lots of talent from around the world. I think the irony now, looking back at that, we had a faction that had the word elite in it, by the way, which is now was a faction in New Japan and a faction in professional wrestling, and so much so that we have another professional wrestling company named after it now in All Elite Wrestling. The first Elite was in Impact Wrestling, World Elite. Eric Young, you should be getting on that. Talking about Cody Rhodes' trademark, get your trademark back, World Elite. But then his last few years with Impact, he was very serious. He was a very serious character. This culminated in 2014 when he actually won the TNA World Heavyweight Championship, a run which it got criticized at the time because it was so close to Daniel Bryan winning the WWE World Heavyweight Championship, and it was very similar, wasn't it? It was the underdog, bearded babyface winning what nobody thought he could win, and it happened in April as well of 2014, the exact same time that Daniel Bryan won it. It just came across as very Impact trying to capitalize on what WWE were doing at the time, and that was part of the problem. That was part of the problem with Impact at the time. But I still felt that it was unfairly criticized because of all that Eric Young's done in Impact Wrestling and in TNA in the past, he absolutely deserved to be world champion, and he absolutely could carry being a world champion in that company. He's got so many years of great moments and great matches and footage and everything in that company. I thought he absolutely deserved the run. It was just bad timing and bad booking the way they did it. If they'd done it a different way, it would have been great. So I really do sympathise with him when it comes to that. But regardless, you can't take that away from him. He's a former TNA World Heavyweight Champion. But maybe he needs to come back in a comedic role right now, especially to rub off that WWE run, because you look at that WWE run that Eric Young just had. I mean, my word, what a disaster. What a disaster. I'm talking about I sympathise with him when he won the World Championship. We got a complete opposite end of the spectrum here. I really sympathise with him the way he was booked in WWE. I mean, in NXT, and this is a recurring thing for WWE, I don't want to turn this into a WWE video because we're talking about Impact here, but in NXT, Eric Young was great. Really great. Really enjoyed his matches. I thought the Sanity faction was a really fun stable. He competed in the return of War Games, right? War Games, the first War Games match in years. Eric Young was a part of that at NXT TakeOver War Games in 2017. Sanity were a big deal. But once again, typical WWE story here. Gets moved to the main roster. No plan for him. No plan for Sanity. And he just appeared on Main Event or jobbed on Monday Night Raw. And then when he appeared on Main Event, he lost there anyway. So maybe he needs to come back to Impact Wrestling in a comedic role as Super Eric before transitioning into a serious role. Maybe he needs to get the stink of that WWE run off of him, and really show what he can do. Show the full range of the Eric Young character. You got to think also, we haven't seen a comedic side to Eric Young in 3-4 years now? So the time has come, maybe the time has come to step back into that comedic role. Eric Young, his personality and his comic timing is tremendous. Anyone that's ever worked with him can absolutely say that. I remember he had his own show. Was it on National Geographic or something like that, where he had a fishing show and he showed so much personality, which actually led him to get a push in Impact Wrestling at the time with the whole comedic thing with ODB, and he one half of the Knockouts Tag Team Champions, and he got married to ODB in a steel cage or the 6 Sides of Steel, whatever it was at the time. And yeah, I mean, Eric Young's comedic timing is unparalleled. It's really good, and he can still go in the ring. And whilst he may be up there in age now and getting on, and he's just got experience. That's what I look at it as. He's got experience. I mentioned before that I really don't think age is a problem when it comes to Impact Wrestling, because when you've got someone like Ken Shamrock, who's like 56, 55 years old, who's still killing it and still looks great, that just shows that if you bring in these guys with experience and use them properly, they can be a massive benefit to the show. And look, Eric Young being back in Impact Wrestling, it's where his career was at its best, isn't it? It's where his career reached its absolute biggest heights, in my opinion. We can talk about being in the first War Games match and etc., but for me, Eric Young's home and the place I associate Eric Young with is Impact Wrestling. Eric Young is an Impact Wrestling guy. This is where he became a name in the wrestling business. They have pretty much his whole career on tape in Impact. I've spoken before about why it's important for other people to come back to Impact Wrestling, the likes of EC3 and the likes of Bully Ray, because Impact Wrestling has all this footage of some of their best moments, some of their greatest moments in their career, world championship victories, comedic moments, great matches against the legends. You got to remember Eric Young had feuds with like the Kevin Nash as well in Impact Wrestling when he was the leader of World Elite. He's had some great matches and some great moments, and he should come back to a place and a realm and a world where he feels special. Eric Young in Impact Wrestling is special. He's a TNA legend, right? He has to be a TNA legend. He was part of the angle with the whole Joseph Parker and Abyss unmasking as well. So Eric Young coming back to Impact Wrestling, for me, it's not only a given, but it's the right thing to do. For his career, you need to come back to somewhere, well, not only where you feel safe, but they've got all of your career in one place. You control your narrative of your career and how you really want to be remembered. Because I remember Eric Young as an Impact Wrestling superstar. I don't remember him for people being in WWE and NXT. And to me, that's a side note. That's something else he did. Eric Young, to me, will always be a TNA guy. And I think TNA now in 2020 is runs so much better than to be honest, than it ever has been. And the product arguably is as good as it's ever been as well. And it's been the case for the last few years. And it's got money. It does have money at the moment. It's owned by Anthem. It's got a safe deal of Access TV because Anthem own that. Impact Wrestling is one of the most stable companies out there now, obviously with the likes of WWE and AEW, but Impact Wrestling is a safe place to go now. You can make good money, you can appear on a good TV show, and look, Impact Wrestling has got quite a lot of buzz about it right now. We're doing videos here because Impact Wrestling, people are talking about it. People are talking about it on social media. People are talking about who's going to go to Impact Wrestling. People are talking about Slammiversary. People are talking about who is the fourth guy in the Slammiversary main event for the World Heavyweight Championship. It could easily be Eric Young, right? It could be Super Eric. I don't think it'll be Super Eric, maybe, thinking about it, but it could be Eric Young without a shadow of a doubt. Eric Young's a TNA legend, right? So Impact Wrestling, getting Eric Young back is the best thing for Eric Young right now. It's the best and only place that I think Eric Young should be right now is Impact Wrestling. But of course, as always, it's just one man's opinion. What is your opinion on potentially Eric Young or Super Eric returning to Impact Wrestling in the near future? Let me know your thoughts on Eric Young's return to Impact Wrestling in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms on the screen right now. That's at 365 Wrestle on Twitter and at Wrestle News 365 on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak with you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.